It's the 17th day of January, 2016, and this is the Radical Agnostic, where ideology goes to die, broadcasting from the great Sonoran Desert of the American Southwest. My name is John, I'm your host. We have Mark here, my co-host.
Hello.
We got Eddie West, the other guest.
Hey-o.
And, folks, last episode you heard we had a great conversation with my friend Barnaby, working and living in Silicon Valley in California. And this now is going to be episode 46 that you're listening to. And we're actually going to call Barnaby back and talk to him a little bit more about this very, very interesting political campaign this year. I mean, guys, this one's a little different, right? This year, this campaign, like, it's somewhat, there's crazy crap happening. Both established parties are worried. Am I right? Trump for the Republicans and Cruz, and on the left we got Bernie Sanders upsetting once again the assumed nominee. Or is this all smoke and mirrors? Is this just the same old shit? Or are the parties, this two-party system, finally feeling some challenge? Mark, I want to know what you think.
I think I don't know enough about Cruz to understand if he really is challenging the Republican Party majority whatever or not. I know they're worried about Trump because I remember when Trump first was doing it, how Fox News was reacting to him, and
they wanted to get rid of him.
Wanted to get rid of him. So that's true. And then plus Sanders. I mean, all you have to do is look at, the Debbie Wasserman thing and debates, and then the whole thing about them, saying that he breached the firewall and took stole the info. So, I mean, if nothing else, I would think that the public that did support the Democrats in the past maybe are realizing now how screwed up they are as much or how much they want to just maintain their position and power as much as the Republicans, and they're not really as interested in progressive issues as they maybe have claimed.
The Democratic Party?
The Democratic Party.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, here's a question, a legitimate question. In the Republican Party, who's not crazy?
Kasich,
Rand Paul.
I would say Chris
No,
Christie's.
Rand Paul is
I would
crazy.
say Chris Christie is not
Rand
crazy. He's wrong, but he's not crazy.
So you're not saying crazy. You mean whose policies aren't wacko conservative to the right? Is that what you're saying? Well, it's not a fair question, though, because we're all liberals.
No. Okay, so we got Ben Carson, who thinks the pyramids were grain silos.
Right.
We've got Ted Cruz, who seriously claims that there's been no Christian acts of terrorism for centuries.
Right.
Like, who is not fucking insane? Rand Paul's insane. He thinks that he is an expert in fields that he's not. He's a liar about what he is an expert in because he refused to be. He has his own he's an ophthalmologist, if I recollect, but he refuses to actually be licensed as a doctor of ophthalmology. No, he's got the Rand Paul system of.
He's also abandoned Ayn Rand, who is obviously his idol and was a devout atheist, and now you can't be that as a president. So he's abandoned Ayn Rand and now says, well, I agree with some of what she said, but the whole atheist thing.
I mean, she's fucking crazy, but don't get...
Ron and Rand are both atheists, let's be honest. So is Obama, and so is Bernie Sanders. You know what the only difference between all those guys is? Bernie admitted it. He said this. He said, his answer to the religious question was, I'm not particularly religious.
He came closest to admitting it.
That is very honest. If he's an agnostic, it's perfectly honest.
No,
I'm not particularly religious. That's just a nice way of saying I don't believe in it at all. I mean,
well, it's
really.
not a full answer.
I don't think so.
It's not a full answer. It's the closest.
I think he's being more truthful than most Americans, but I think most Americans, if you actually examined how they live and their actual thought process, they would be not particularly religious. They might even claim to be Catholic or Protestant or whatever.
Right, that's what
but
I'm
how
saying.
many times a year do they go to church?
I think they
Very
would say.
little.
I think
how much does God or the religious book that they supposedly adhere to influence their life or their decisions about anything?
They would say
very
something.
little.
But I think
of course,
they would say
something.
Well,
not
but
spiritual,
but that's different.
Not
right?
particularly religious.
Yes.
Is
Just
the bisexual
we've
is to being atheist like being not particularly religious is to being atheist as bisexual is to being gay.
No, it isn't.
No, wait. There are real bisexuals.
Right.
And there are real people who just say, who are Christian, but not particularly religious
but
or whatever.
in that context of a news reporter asking you about your religious thing and knowing that every president ever has had to say that he loves the hell out of Jesus, in that context...
Yeah, but he could be Jewish and not particularly religious. You know, like
he is.
He's
in the context of that question, if you don't have any qualifier, if you don't say, well, I think some of the ideas in the old are interesting, or I think that this are interesting. If you don't say any of that and your statement is just this blunt, I'm not particularly religious, that is communicating honestly and clearly to the public, I don't believe in any of it. Like
I don't think that's true.
Yeah,
I think
disagree.
I think a better analogy than what Eddie made is not particularly religious is to matters of faith as someone who's never questioned or even been asked a question about their sexuality is to homosexuality or heterosexuality or anything. You just, it doesn't come into play.
Okay.
You do what you do, and you don't think about it. You're not like, but do I really like that? Is that what I'm really into? Maybe I'd like something else. Maybe I should go examine it and go research it and figure it out.
No, that makes sense.
The point I was just trying to make is, I feel like I'm not particularly religious can be its own thing where you are just not, and maybe you're Protestant, one of those Protestant faiths, or it can also be I'm actually straight up atheist and I don't want to say it.
But you're ignoring my whole thing of the context in which he answered that question. This is a presidential candidate. They're finding out his policy on Christianity.
No, I'm not.
Doesn't it significant
if you went
that he didn't have any qualifier? He didn't say. I already said it, but you don't buy what I said. All right.
No,
all right.
I think they're similar. I'm saying. I guess the point I'm trying to make is not that I'm saying, oh, yeah, he's definitely atheist. I'm trying to take them both at the fact that he could be atheist.
I think he's agnostic.
Or agnostic or something else. Like, I'm trying to open that. I'm saying that just like if someone says they're bisexual, a lot of gay people go through that to get to gay. They say, well, I'm bisexual.
Right.
And but there are real bisexuals. Similarly, there are people who are atheist or agnostic, and it may be a path for some people to get from I'm not particularly religious to what they wind up at.
I think it's entertaining to me that the Rand Paul thing that he has to be like, if you look up his responses to the question, he's like, yeah, I'm a
Rand
Christian.
Paul is not as good as his father. I'm sorry.
No, he isn't. He's a Republican,
but he's distancing himself from Ayn Rand. Not just on the Ayn Rand, not just on the atheism thing. She's also fallen out of favor amongst Tea Party and libertarians and stuff because of some of her wacky, crazy ideas that have finally been exposed when they were propping her up. Well,
yeah, she's an extreme libertarian.
Well, not just that, but she was in love with a serial killer and thought that his behavior was okay because I forget the guy's name, but he killed at least one young girl, kidnapped her and killed her.
Weird.
And she thought that he was,
She also had
she kind of had a Nietzsche thing of beyond good and evil.
Power.
Like this person was beyond the human element and our morality.
Yeah.
And he did what he wanted, and that's,
William Edward Hickman.
Wow. She also
12-year-old girl.
She also had an affair with Alan Greenspan, the head of the Federal Reserve, right? For a long time.
Yeah, not anymore. But I've read. I don't know about you guys. I've read Atlas Shrugged. I've read The Fountainhead, and I've read. There's another one I can't think of.
So have I.
You've read all three?
Yeah, Anthem.
Anthem.
I guess that proves it.
Yeah,
damn.
Skippy.
I've heard the Rush song.
I was a huge fan of Ayn Rand.
Atlas. Ooh,
I was a little. I have been
a
lot of stages
too.
A lot of stages, guys.
Atlas Shrugged has a rape scene. Atlas Shrugged has a rape scene, and it's portrayed as a good thing.
Yep.
Sorry.
Some people are into that.
Well,
they are.
No, if it's a BDSM,
I don't mean
it
guys.
wasn't done as BDSM.
But she wasn't screaming no, though. It wasn't a classic sort of rape scenario. It's a book.
So are we going to talk about legitimate rape?
No. All right, so let's call Barnaby. Get up in this thing. He's having a great time. He texted me. So
really,
we're
well, cool.
You manage that volume for me, Eddie. You'll know. I love the ringing on the air. It's something.
Right. Hello.
Barnaby, are you back, my friend?
I am back.
Welcome to the Radical Agnostic episode 46. This we're splitting them up into 1 hour episodes. So, dude, I've been having a great time talking to you, and I want to continue the conversation. We'll do a little bit more about this Democratic primary, and then maybe we'll slip into some more philosophical general issues. How's that sound?
Sounds great, and I want to second the feeling. I'm having a blast. You guys are awesome. It is tremendous fun talking to you. And after hearing the rest of you guys, I want to go back to all of your episodes.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. But I got to say, personally, when you're running a podcast, man, that what you want more than anything else is articulate, clear, passionate conversation, and you've got all that in spades. So I'm really happy to have you, man.
Pleasure's all mine. So
let's just here we're going to continue on to our little Democratic primary debate conversation here. The main argument I've heard, and I'm not sure how much stake you put in this, but that's a fire alarm from another apartment, Eddie, if you're wondering what that beeping is. The main argument is kind of, well, Bernie's all good. He's all well and good. We like his consistency and his policies, but look, he could never win in the general election. And most rational people looking at this, at least a few months ago, would have to conclude that, yes, Hillary is a professional politician. She has connections. She has endorsements. This is the person we need to run against a Republican. Now, I want to offer you my argument why Bernie Sanders, and I no longer feel that this is like some kind of desperate argument where I'm kind of making stuff up and twisting the truth. I actually 82% believe this now. That in the general election, I think Bernie would be as strong or stronger than Hillary. And here's why. Point number one, 99% of Hillary supporters, this isn't a real number, but I think 99% of Hillary supporters will vote for Bernie Sanders if he becomes the Democratic nominee. And that the reverse is not true. I mean, you've said to me, if Bernie wins, you'll vote for him in the general election, right?
I would, yes.
Yeah, so and I
begrudgingly.
Begrudgingly. And I have said that if Hillary wins the nomination, I will not vote for her in the general election. And I know I kind of feel like a dick for saying it, because it makes me sound like an extremist who's willing to let some terrible Republican in. But
it does.
Yeah, I know. So that's fine, and I'll accept that. But the point is that Hillary supporters will vote for Bernie. Bernie supporters en masse will not vote for Hillary. So now you're taking votes away from the Democratic candidate in the general election if Hillary wins. So that's my first line of defense.
I also have a question for Barnaby. Because,
should he answer that first, or is it related?
It's kind of related.
Well, let him answer that first.
Well, no.
Go ahead, Barnaby.
Okay.
There's a question for me?
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah. I didn't have a question. But the point was, well, what do you think of that argument that Bernie will get Bernie will get more votes than Hillary would in the general election?
He's asking the electability question.
Right.
I understand why you would think that, right? But because right now, when you look at most Bernie supporters I talk to do have a similar theme to you, where they're like, no, I'm voting for Bernie because he's not the establishment, or at least, his marketing campaign thinks of him as being, not a politician somehow. So therefore they wouldn't want to vote for Hillary in the general campaign. That ignores what happens between the nomination and the actual election.
Right.
Right. There are tremendous forces that come into play that shift people's opinions, that move people out of their seats and into the voting booths. Right?
Yeah.
We were talking in the last podcast about micro-targeting based on psychographic profiles, right?
Yes,
that
sir.
is happening in politics too. The advertisements that you will receive, the communications that you will get sent to you, everything around you will be targeting you and your psychology in such a way to convert you from a Bernie supporter into a Clinton supporter. It will work both ways, by the way. If Sanders wins, everything will be trying to target me to turn me from a Clinton supporter into a Sanders supporter.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. There will be a huge push to say, Democrats, you better vote for the goddamn nominee or you're going to get Trump or Cruz or Rubio, right? So it's huge, and it's going to pull most people. But don't you think that Bernie supporters...
Okay. I'm not saying that's the argument that will happen. I'm saying an argument will be given to you that appeals directly to you, that based on every piece of data that's been collected about your online life, will turn you into a Clinton supporter. So it will have the highest probability of turning you specific. So I will get a different message, and you will get a different message.
I believe that I'll get the message, Barnaby, but the prediction that I will flip. I mean, I've been on this podcast episode after episode saying I won't vote for her. I might just not vote for her out of pride, embarrassment. I don't think I will be swayed.
But don't worry, Barnaby. I'll be badgering him into it, depending on what happens after the primary.
What'd you say, Barnaby?
Sorry, I didn't hear the other one, but I'm saying there is a part two to this.
Go ahead.
So part one is that will happen after the primaries, right? Part two is the general election electability of a candidate, right? We cannot exclude this as a valid argument because Obama won the elections by combining what's called the blue wall. His coalition basically puts together a bunch of states that are currently blue states, and as long as we hold those states, we win, right? Mm-hmm. We don't even have to win a majority of the swing states to win. Just what we have now, as what we count as blue states, will let us win.
But how does that relate to the gerrymandering?
Hold that. Huh?
Well, because the Republicans have worked hard to gerrymander, and I don't know enough about it.
They've tried, but the gerrymandering helps them on the local level. That's why they have a stranglehold on both houses of Congress, right? The House and Senate,
right? And the majority of governorships and local politicians too.
But
despite being non
Republicans run the country. I mean, there's a Democrat in the presidency. Every other office, from top to bottom, is majority Republican.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the Democrats own the White House, and Republicans own the state houses, right? The reason for that, look at this. Democrats have won 4 out of the past 5 popular votes in presidential elections.
Right.
Right. We own the White House in a sense. What we need is a candidate who can keep that coalition and keep it going. Now, when you look at Sanders, how well is he polling in the absolutely crucial parts of those coalitions? How well is Sanders polling among African Americans?
But Barnaby, you just
said
not well, terribly.
Really?
Oh yeah, he's doing. He's got 20% of the vote in South Carolina.
I want to know both. Actually, I want to know John and Barnaby's explanation for that.
The explanation is that Bill Clinton was popularly called the first black president. I mean, the black communities loved him, and maybe for good reason. I can't speak for black people, but I just think she's connected to him, and they love him, and probably for good reason. But and that's why Hillary had the majority of the black vote right up until the Iowa primary in 2012 or 8. Sorry,
I want to know. I mean, obviously you're a Sanders supporter, John.
Yeah.
So I want to know Barnaby's explanation. Barnaby, what's your explanation for why? I mean, at the risk of sounding racist, why do black people like Hillary more than Bernie? Because I actually didn't know that.
And by the way, name recognition. But go ahead, Barnaby.
I think she gets it, right? She's there in those communities all the time. She speaks to leaders in the African communities. She is present. She speaks the language that appeals to them, and she has supported policy, fought their fight in a way that's very visible to them, and has their undying loyalty. As you pointed out, before Iowa, she still had the majority of the black vote.
Yep.
Not Obama. It wasn't until Obama won Iowa that the black vote decided, oh, wow, here's someone who actually can win, and started to get behind him. Even then, she still had 30 or 40% of the black vote after that.
Yeah.
So she's doing really well among them because she's doing tremendously good things for them.
Okay.
Like what? No, seriously, when you say, can you give me, and I don't want, all of the examples ever, but I just was not really familiar with any. I guess would be the point.
And when she was a senator or when she was Secretary of State, when did she do these good things?
Assuming from her time as a senator, and also from the way she speaks, right? When I mentioned earlier you would be in the minority for looking at people's voting records, most people vote based on what they hear in elections, right? Again, when she speaks to African Americans, I don't hear that, and I don't pick up on those nuances because I'm not African American.
That makes sense.
From everything I could see about the reaction, she speaks directly to their hearts. She understands their issues at a fundamental level that I never can.
So her messaging, her messaging towards them, her messaging is effective.
Well, I agree with Barnaby's main point, but I think it's coming across a little weird because of he's saying she speaks to their heart, and she gives good lip service, and she talks to the right people in the black community.
Yeah.
To represent a good look, and therefore, like you said, people vote on how it looks, not how it is.
I would phrase that differently, to champion their causes.
I know you would say it differently because you're a supporter of Hillary.
Yes.
I have a question for Barnaby.
Wait.
I have a question.
Okay.
The election is tomorrow, and it's Hillary versus Bernie in both of them third parties, so you're not going to talk about the Democrat like I support the Democrats historically. Somehow, the history has shifted. The election is tomorrow. The only two candidates are Hillary and Bernie. Who do you vote for? So we're not talking about electability. We're not talking about party, because,
And your vote makes this person the president.
Sure. That's not real, but okay.
Yeah, I would vote for Hillary.
Yeah.
Okay. What makes you vote for Hillary?
I think he already explained that last time. She's got the polish, and also he likes the song that she sings. He likes the moderate nature of her policies. So,
fair enough.
Yeah, those are things. And you know what? I'll say one thing for Hillary. When Black Lives Matter, when she met with some of them, usually she uses her security to keep them out of the building completely so they don't interrupt. But she did have a sit down with them, and what she said to them was, come back to me with a list of policies that you want me to enact. And I really liked that, because that's a practical thing. That's I know you're angry, but what are we doing?
What does that mean? And I think that's
So
at the risk of being mean myself, I think that's been a big problem in the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah, well, it's a disorganized movement.
Yeah, what the fuck do you
want? It's like Occupy
and
Wall Street. Like, nobody knew what the hell was going on.
Now, to be clear, I would argue Occupy is worse than the Black Lives.
Yeah.
And that's saying something, because I do think that
there were so many of them in Occupy.
Occupy had no idea what the fuck they wanted.
Yeah.
I think Black Lives Matter at least there's a more specific, can we not shoot these people?
Right.
That's at least a little more specific.
Now, in my opinion, Bernie's would do more for the black community, A, by taking marijuana off the federal prohibited substances thing.
That's pretty racist.
B, by attacking. No, it isn't, because the drug laws are racist, Eddie. So taking the drug laws away that's not racist of me to say. Secondly, he's hardcore against the prison industrial complex, talks about it often, and is against taking money from the prison lobby, of course, since he doesn't take money from corporations. So to me, those are by far more important policy considerations for black people in this country. But that's my
But he doesn't have concrete policies on it. He has high-level talking points about it. Hillary actually rolled out detailed papers about her criminal justice reform policies.
I have to give you that.
Wait. Let's all be quiet for a second and go. Did you just give a point to Hillary, John?
I did. I just gave her a little tiny point. She's an 800 points behind, though, so it's not going to matter. So the next here's the next reason why Bernie's better in the general. Zero scandals, and Hillary, of course, has a legal proceeding going on. I don't care if it's legit or not.
Actually, I want to know Barnaby's opinion.
Hold on, I'm not done.
On the scandal, the specific legal thing.
It's in the news, whether it's a real scandal or not. She has two scandals, Benghazi and the emails. I think they're both full of shit.
Benghazi's nonsense.
I know it is, but they're in the news. We're talking about electability in the general now, right? We're talking about how people perceive the candidates. Bernie, no scandals.
So your point is just electability. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm addressing the whole Bernie can't be elected argument.
Because there's two arguments when you're talking about scandals. There's scandals like somebody's been a douchebag personally on several things versus somebody hasn't been a douchebag at all, right? That's a different argument.
Scandals
than scandals in terms of their electability or their political future.
Okay, but
those are two.
You understand
things.
what I'm saying is that there's big things in the news that make Hillary look bad, and there are none for Bernie. And he has a squeaky clean record. I mean, there's people that opposed the Clintons in the 90s who ended up dead in the suitcases that committed suicide and somehow zipped themselves up into a Ziploc bag afterwards. So there's scandals, and added to that is the whole thing that I mentioned last time, which is that people hate Hillary Clinton.
But people hate socialism, whether they should or not.
Very true. But they don't. It's not, the fury is not the same as the Republican and some independents feeling towards Hillary. So
Barnaby, and
that's
you
point
I
number
want
two.
Barnaby's
So I understand the point, right? The point you're making is that there's more points against Hillary on the electability front because of these scandals that were levied against her, right?
Right.
So, you know, when I look at it logically, I think of it as, well, she was on the national stage for her whole life, so she's had lots of time for people to fling things at her. Bernie is just now coming onto the national stage. You're just now starting to see things lobbied against him, right? You're just now starting to see people talking about him flip-flopping, people talking about, there's some super PAC that does support him, right?
No.
People talk about these things. Like, more and more things are starting to come up negative about him because he's in that national spotlight.
Okay. Those are weak as hell.
Hold on. Maybe I couldn't hear well enough.
Well, his one scandal that Barnaby mentioned was the flip-flop on the gun law that we discussed last time, the manufacturers. And that's not a scandal. It's just a flip-flop accusation.
No. I'm saying it's a start. I'm saying we're seeing a trend start to emerge as he hits the spotlight.
Well, Barnaby,
right?
and I want your
more and more negative things start to happen against him.
Right.
She's been in the spotlight the whole time, so all that negative stuff has been flowing in her direction for a very long time.
But that's still an argument against her because that stuff exists.
But just to speak to John's point, I think there's always going to be negative things brought up about whatever any candidate. But John's speaking specifically about things, illegal things that Clinton could, whether she's guilty or not, Clinton could serve jail time or there could be a penalty legally. Now, whatever flip-flopping Sanders does is not anything about law.
Right.
It's not just his opinion flip-flops, and he looks then kind of confused or whatever.
Nothing he did led to a death, allegedly, of a diplomat in Benghazi, in other words.
Hold on. Nothing.
Well, and I'm not even
up yet. Give it time, right? If he becomes president, or if he becomes front runner for long enough, those kind of things will pop up against him given enough time.
But those things have popped up against her.
Against Clinton. Let's talk about those.
Well, hold on, Barnaby.
No.
Hold on. Barnaby.
Okay.
Should we take Benghazi seriously? I'm going to say no, and I'm someone who does not. I'm not a Hillary supporter. You are on this show as Hillary supporter.
I agree. It's fine.
Okay.
That doesn't matter. We're talking about what Barnaby's been stressing this whole time, which is the public perception. What's on TV? You know, what's on TV convincing people that you can't trust Hillary. And it's deep in the American consciousness, reasons not to trust Hillary. That's why she has the lowest trust rating of anyone.
But, John, you supported Bernie pretty much right out the gate, right?
Yes, sir.
Even when he was kind of there was no fucking way he was going to go.
Yeah, he was
right?
Yeah.
So when you look at what happens now and you look at the people, there's that new movie out, 13 Hours, which is a Republican's wet dream about fucking Benghazi, even though it's not her goddamn fault. Do not get me started on this. I get that a certain amount of the population may think, oh, fuck her because of Benghazi.
We're talking about electability.
No, because you didn't want to talk about that kind of concept when Bernie was first getting out. Because you said, I support him anyway. So from Barnaby's perspective, and it's your call, Barnaby. How dare I speak for you? I'm not trying to. But whether he supports Hillary or not is irrelevant to whether she is per se necessarily electable, unless that factors into his decision.
Except for Eddie. Except for basically, it has sounded to me the whole entire time like, okay, Barnaby likes that she's moderate And so that's the one point that he likes more than Sanders. But then the other main point I feel he makes over and over again is that she is more electable than Sanders.
And it's all over the news.
So when you say, Eddie, when you say that is not a factor, when he has said over and over again that it is the main factor that he supports her, I have to think that you have not been listening to this fucking show.
Go ahead, Barnaby.
So, guys, let's talk about the electability in regards to Benghazi, right?
Yes.
So you guys mentioned, regardless of the fact people may have had an opinion about her based on what was said in Benghazi, right? Look at what happened after her Benghazi testimony, right? This was like a 11-hour marathon,
right?
Where he slammed the Republicans on it.
Yeah.
Where
her approval went way up.
The public perception,
yeah,
away from it being a scandal about her to it being a scandal about the Republicans fabricating things, right?
Yeah,
which actually is the case, right? We know now from all the documents, from all the emails that were revealed, this thing happened. She immediately asked the military for help. They identified forces in Spain and Croatia that could fly out there. And then a couple hours later, they arrived after everything had kind of burned down, right?
So
the whole thing
you're saying that
stand-down orders was made up.
You're saying
the whole thing about the Benghazi mission being some kind of an embassy or a consulate was made up. It was not. It was a mission.
You're saying
we know all of these things are fabricated.
You're saying that when the Republicans bring up a scandal that's so poorly orchestrated, it actually works in her favor when the public realizes that.
Right. Except for the public in her favor.
Right, except for, I'm not going to say a majority, but there's quite a number of people that haven't realized it yet.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not John or me or anyone else's argument. We're not saying that these scandals that are coming up against Hillary are worthy, or, we're not arguing that these are legit reasons not to vote against her. We're just saying that some people are going to find that they are.
Right.
Some people are going to think perception that this is happening, and it's happening to her. Maybe it's going to happen to Sanders in the future, as you've said. Well, I'm just saying, now, that's a possibility. But Barnaby, this is fact that it is happening to Clinton.
Barnaby,
it's 100% fact.
Right.
We're not making it up. We're not saying, this might happen in the future.
Yeah.
We're not saying that.
And something, of course, they'll have attacks on Bernie. I mean, he has an illegitimate child. That they'll leak that eventually. But you can predict that an equally damaging scandal will happen to Bernie, but you might be wrong. I mean, it might just be weak little shit that the public brushes off. So you might be right, but you might not be. So that I think we have to leave that point there.
Right. Everything is an opinion, right? But, I look at patterns that happen in this. Like, I don't follow sports, but I follow politics with this kind of level of passion.
Right.
So when I see these kind of patterns, I kind of know what's coming, right? I know what the game is. So, yes, scandals will be made up against him, whether they're true or not, and they will be brought and they will be, huge, right? So let's assume Benghazi is 100% fabricated, right? And it's brought against Clinton, and she eats this kind of stuff for breakfast, right? This is what makes her stronger. Can Sanders do that? Right?
Well, then why is her trust?
Obama,
then why is her trust rating so poor?
She'll turn that around between now and November.
I don't think so.
Look at what happened to Obama in the same space, right? When all of a sudden he surged, right? A lot of stuff started coming about him. People were making up things like, "Oh, he's a Muslim." People were saying, "Oh, look at his crazy preacher at church."
Okay.
People were saying he went to a madrasa, or people were saying he was born in Kenya, right?
Well,
none of that stuff was legitimate, but it was brought against him, and a lot of people didn't vote for him because of that stuff.
But he was still elected.
Kind of things will be brought against Sanders.
But he was.
Just a second, Barnaby. Just wait 2 seconds.
Technical difficulties.
All right, we're back on. Well, I want to move on to the next point. You defended that point as well as you could, and it was quite good defense. So we'll let the listeners decide on that one. So my next point of the electability thing is that The Republican nominee, by all indications, is going to be extremely conservative. So we're seeing chaos in the Republican Party. Trump has been leading since he entered the campaign by double digits. Now we see Cruz creeping up, possible challenger, and then number 3, Rubio, the guy that I've been predicting will be elected just due to the brute force of the Republican establishment. So we have 3 guys. Rubio is extremely conservative. In fact, Trump is the least conservative of the 3. It's just that he's like outrageously racist on like 2 or 3 different policies. But those 2, in terms of political policy, more conservative than Trump. So
in the primaries.
What's that?
In the primaries.
Right. You're saying he's going to switch. He's going to move to the left. Of course.
Every candidate does this, right?
Of course.
When they run for their primaries, they have to appeal to their voting base. So they tend to be further left. And then once they win the nomination, they make this race to the center.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So
and now,
if Trump wins, you're going to see him run full speed to the middle.
Yep.
If Rubio wins, he's going to run as fast as he can to the middle.
But there's certain things, there's certain concrete policies they've put forth that they can't take back.
Yeah,
so
and
Rubio
do you really think that Donald is going to go to the middle?
He'll go in some ways. He'll go into. They all do, and of course Hillary.
The man has no shame. He'll say anything.
And of course Hillary.
He'll all of a sudden switch his tune.
Definitely, but Hillary, of course, you've been saying she's a good moderate. She's realistic.
Yes.
And my point to you on Facebook the other day was, and where will she put her tent? Where will she pitch her tent come general election time if she's the nominee? Yeah. She'll be in Europe, she would be the far right by the time she gets done with this because she's going to move right during the general. If she's not right enough, you like her policies right now. You call her policies right now moderate. So what are you going to think of them when she's in the general?
So my prediction is she doesn't have far to go in the general. She's not going to swing very far. Bernie, however, look, I mean, the guy is a self-proclaimed socialist. How do you run to the center from there? How are you going to make yourself more electable to the general population if you're that far left?
Right. Well, that's what I like about him, that he's not going to flip on stuff. He's going to stick to his guns. But my point on this third point was...
He'll be disappointed in that. He will.
Well, he will move to the right.
Actually, my biggest fear is that he won't.
Right. Well, but anyway, my point in this was... Bernie's super left, okay? So that's a bad thing in the general election. The way I'm addressing this is by saying the Republican nominee is going to be one of these 3 guys, and they're all far, far to the right. So it creates the perfect opportunity for a leftist candidate to squeeze by. That's my point, is that people are not... If Rubio is the guy, if Cruz is the guy, Rubio wants to prosecute... use federal cops to shut down legal marijuana in the 4 states where it's legal and D.C. He said he's going to do that. 63% of the American people want marijuana to be legalized. That's not going to play well in the general. My point being, it looks now to all the evidence says the Republican candidate is going to be very conservative, very, very, compared to Mitt Romney, compared to John McCain, compared to George W. Bush. The Republican candidate is going to be very conservative, and that creates the perfect opportunity. That makes a guy like Sanders actually realistically possible to be elected in the general. That was point number 3.
I strongly believe that the Democrats going to win just because the Republicans are clown card. There's no one who has a plausible chance of winning.
That's what I think. That's why I think
whoever is the Democrat is probably going to win.
Exactly. This is not a tight race. This is not going to be a tight race.
Well,
you're seeing self-destruct.
That's what I said earlier with the blue wall, right? The Democrats have the upper hand. So regardless of who wins, they have a 60% chance of winning just out of the bat, and then they can move that up or down based on who it is.
Right. So, and another thing, Bernie, the gun control issue that you brought up has been used heavily against Bernie by Hillary. We'll probably see it again tonight at the Democratic debate held on a Sunday. I guess the football games will be over, but still. Anyway,
what channel is it on? Do you know?
What channel is it on? Does anybody know that? NBC? I think it's NBC. Let's stick with that because I think I remember hearing that. If Bernie is weak on gun control, that's going to help him in the general election without any flip-flopping necessary. So that's argument number 4 for Bernie. If he is weak on gun control, that's going to... Independents and conservative Democrats are going to love that. Am I right?
That's one issue of many. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's
he may
point
have the
number
upper
4.
hand there, but he's never going to win over gun nuts per se, right? He still has other positions regarding guns that they will use to target him, right? Don't assume that.
Well,
hold
on. What do you mean by that? I'd like you to explain what you mean by that, because like I know some gun nuts, and I'm not even talking about Brian or Mark. I know like there are people who are quote unquote gun nuts who are still like reasonable people.
Yeah.
And Brian's one of them. I'm not actually trying to talk shit about him.
Yeah.
I'm just more thinking of several people I know specifically who aren't him.
Well, let me just ask you something, Barnaby, real quick. What is the farthest you would like to see gun control go? Let's say you could enact legislation today of your choosing. How far would you like gun control to go? Give us some
ignoring the Constitution for a moment.
Yeah, ignoring everything. You just get to make the rules.
Personal.
What would be best for America? Give us your farthest left that you would go.
It's an interesting way of saying it, because you can't ignore the Constitution on this, right? That it's a part of American culture.
Yeah.
That people have this weird fixation on their right to own guns, right? Even though originally it was the right to own guns to defend against tyranny, now it somehow like magically got converted based on some marketing campaign from the NRA into the right to own guns so that you can shoot people if they come into your home or go hunting or other BS, which was never the original intent. But it's a part of American culture, right? So you cannot say like, I want something that will happen that is fundamentally un-American.
Right.
What I do want is, there are a lot of loopholes into who can buy guns, right? If you are crazy, you should not have one, right? Like the ability of our nation to defend against tyranny, like you and I should have guns in order to defend against the government becoming tyrannical. I think if you only have your mentally sane people in your society own guns to defend against tyranny, you beat it, right? You can do that without having the mental nutcases own guns.
Right.
So
you're just saying people who are...
That's a common sense reform I'd like enacted.
Okay, yeah, well, that's fine. I don't think many of us are against that. I don't want to get too far into that subject because this show it goes too far usually. So we'll move to my next... I appreciate that. We'll move to the next... the next general election thing. Hillary is known far and wide as being very experienced. She's got this experience thing under her belt. Bernie Sanders has been in Congress for 30 years. He's the longest serving independent ever. I don't understand this experience stuff. He served on the Veterans Affairs Committee. He's served on all kinds of economic committees. This man has tons of experience. So, like, it must just come down to her being Secretary of State, having diplomatic chops. But, of course, Obama didn't. Most presidents didn't. So is the experience argument even valid?
Yes. Yes, it is.
How? He's very experienced, is my point. 30 years in the American political system.
So you were saying it would be invalid based on the amount of time that one spends because, Obama, for example, didn't have a whole lot of time and experience.
2 years.
Right? But she has a breadth of experience in international affairs, right? She was a very active First Lady. She was in a lot of committees, even as a junior senator in New York, and in the State Department, right? These are a breadth of experience across multiple parts that relate more to the presidency than simply legislation, right?
Okay.
Than lawmaking.
I have a question for you, Barnaby.
Kind of executive level experience.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Now, you voted for Hillary in the last primary where she was available, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Are you glad that Obama beat her?
No.
Do you think she would have made a better president?
I think she would have been equally good. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, then.
All right. Let's move to the next point. Political experience. We did that. Look, if Trump is the guy, and then it's versus Hillary
or anyone.
Yes.
Box of rocks.
Trump is actually against. He's one of the only Republicans, him and Kasich and Rand Paul, who is against sending troops into Syria, ground war. So we got to hand it to Trump. I mean, at least he's that's a good idea. He's right about that. in my opinion. He was also, as a public figure, against the Iraq War. If it's Hillary versus Trump, Trump can attack her from the left on the Iraq War vote. He cannot do that to Sanders. Not only can Hillary not bring up the Iraq War vote in the debates because she voted for it, Trump can bring it up and throw it against her from the left. Not so with Bernie Sanders.
Right. So once Trump wins and he runs to the middle, right, he would bring these kind of attacks, some even from the left, against Hillary, right? I'll grant you that. He might use the Iraq War vote. Not that many Americans care about that anymore. It was a big issue 8 years ago.
True.
In the elections then. It's a little bit less of a big deal now.
True.
It seems that most Americans now kind of forgot that and are willing to send troops abroad again. Now, having said that, it's true about Hillary. Can you imagine the shitstorm that would await Bernie Sanders if he was against Donald Trump, right? Like I said, Hillary eats this kind of stuff for breakfast. It makes her stronger. She knows how to turn everything like that into her favor. Bernie, he's had plenty of experience on the, the congressional level. He doesn't have that experience on the national stage of dealing with that kind of a firestorm. He would crumple under the kind of pressure that Donald Trump can bring against him.
Crumple? Well, you just start crying on the stage?
Yeah, define crumple.
To me, I think he'll act like he always does, Bernie style, and to the public, it'll be the crazy carnival barker versus this reasonable, rational guy who doesn't get pulled into crazy arguments. To me, the personality will win over 60% of the populace of Bernie Sanders.
Don't make the mistake of thinking that Donald Trump who would run in the primary is the same Donald Trump who would run in the general election.
Okay, but they'll still have clips of him from these days. But yeah, you're right.
But who will care, right? In those debates, in the media savvy, like in the media world that will exist, right? Donald Trump will be the Donald Trump in the general will be different, and the amount of stuff that he can bring against any candidate, right, is huge. So look at what happened on the Republican side, right? Because you asked what it would look like. Would Bernie cry? Et cetera. So look at what happened on the Republican side, right? At one moment, Carson was surging, right? Then a bunch of negative stuff came out about him.
Right.
He crumpled, right? Now who talks about Carson? Most recently, Cruz started ascending, right? And holy hell, look at the firestorm he's under. He made that comment about New York values, right? There are front page newspapers giving him the middle finger, right? And he dropped in the polls. He dropped on prediction markets, and Donald Trump went up.
I get your point. Right? I get the point that he's destroying his Republican opponents. But for you to say,
he will try the same against Democratic opponents,
right? And to say that Sanders will crumple, but Hillary won't. I don't know. That's another prediction you're making. Okay. I mean, maybe Sanders would crumple.
You asked about experience, right? Because she has that is experience she has.
He's run a lot of elections, my friends. He's run a lot of campaigns in the House of Representatives and in the Senate and in the city in Burlington. So
those are small stages. Look at the other Democratic candidates who ran earlier, right? O'Malley, Webb, right? These are also people who ran sort of small campaigns, right? In local areas. So the machine that hits them, the Republican machine that hits them, is small. It's state level. When you get on the national stage, the machine that hits you is fucking huge.
No, that's a very good point.
Hit hard.
That's a very good point.
Sanders is not used to being hit hard like that.
Yeah, Vermont politics is nothing compared to that's true. That's true.
John and Barnaby, do you guys remember seeing Sanders on the news at all when you guys were younger?
No.
Barnaby?
No, I don't.
Oh,
no.
Well, Plattsburgh had a news. Really? Okay, well, then I retract any comments I was going to make, because I remember, because I used to get Plattsburgh's...
there's a lot of videos of him in the 80s and 90s on the Senate floor and the House floor.
Not on the floor, on, the out news. And about.
No.
Oot and a boot, as the Canadians would say.
All right, so we're running out of time again. This is just too good. I want to finish this last point, and then I want to get us into a little discussion that doesn't have to do with this. My last thing is, what we're seeing in this election, and why I think this election is a little different, which we talked about a bit before we called you back, is that both sides, people are sick and motherfucking tired of the two-party system. So Trump and Cruz illustrate that, and Carson on the right. And on the left, Bernie Sanders illustrates it. His unexpected support, and of course, I'm sure you'll admit, completely unprecedented support that he's getting. The poll rises, Iowa, New Hampshire. I know you don't think that that's going to win him the game, but everyone's impressed by how this person that nobody knows is doing so well. And he's not polished, and he's not this. He's just a scruffy old guy. And people are turning up to the rallies he throws are the biggest in the whole campaign, and the individual donations, far more than Hillary's receiving. So there's a lot of impressive things about Sanders. He might not be the best guy for the job, whatever. But what we're seeing on both sides is an unprecedented move against the establishment picks. People, I think it's safe to say that 60% of this country, maybe more, and the independents in this country are growing, do not want to participate in the spoon-fed party politics. So my final point for Sanders' electability is that if it's Hillary versus Trump, Trump represents the people. Trump becomes the populist candidate. And I know that is the most disgusting sentence I've ever uttered, but it's going to be the fact in the public perception. Trump is the anti-establishment candidate. Bernie Sanders against Trump would lose that advantage because Bernie is equally viewed as anti-establishment, longest-serving independent in congressional history, et cetera, et cetera. Has been fighting against the DNC and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So that's my final argument for his electability in the general, is that Trump will not get that populist boost against Sanders, but he will against Hillary, because if ever there was a spoon-fed candidate, it's Hillary Clinton. I mean, come on.
So populism is an interesting thing, right? It's definitely alive and well on the right. As you mentioned, there were not one, but four candidates on the right who are populists. And on the left, there's only one. There's only two real candidates on the left, right?
Right.
And Sanders sort of takes that mantle. Populism around the world is always interesting. It's usually professional politicians who are pretending to be sort of beyond the establishment. Look at Marine Le Pen in France, right? She's a populist candidate, mind you, a fascist, sort of neo-Nazi French candidate, but she's a populist, and she's a professional politician, but still has that image of being beyond the system, beyond the control of party machines.
Right, just like
even
Trump.
She runs the party machine herself. Yeah, it happens everywhere. Spain, what was that one party? There's some long-haired hippie who has like the third most popular party now. It's so populism is
well. You're being sneaky now. You're trying to say that populism equals Hitler. I mean, they're not all.
No. There's the one in Spain is a socialist, actually, right?
Okay.
So it happens all across the spectrum, right? But it's a kind of a thing, and you can see it, and it rarely wins top elections, right? It rarely wins presidential things. Now, you can see it in Africa. A lot of populists win there, et cetera. In America, populism has been more a tendency of the right. When you look at their speeches, they're always like, "Oh, Washington's broken. We're going to come in and we're going to do this whole Tea Party thing and reinvent, et cetera." That's what populism tends to look like more in America, right? That personification of it.
Right. We're trying to change that.
That's only recent.
I mean, FDR, Teddy Roosevelt. I mean, and by the way, you would never, if this were 1932 or 8 when he won his first, FDR won his first election. If we had a podcast going on the radio, and I was like, Barnaby, what do you think of this FDR guy and his Medicare idea and all blah blah blah? You would have been like, that's ridiculous. He'll never pass a GI Bill of Rights. He'll never pass a Medicare, Social Security, higher taxes on the rich. You will never get a law against the banks. Separating commercial from investment banks. He did all of that.
Huey Long was a Democrat.
Yeah, it happens, but it's outliers usually, right? It's rare. So then you're saying, well,
I'm just saying, have a little hope.
Become an outlier.
New hope
does exist, but it's usually low-lying hope, right? In this election, I'd say because it's not the 1930s, right?
Right.
It is. is almost a century afterwards, right? Yep. The landscape has changed. In today's landscape, the mantle of populism is very alive and well on the Republican side, right? So if someone runs a populist campaign...
How long do you think the Republicans have owned populism, though?
Yeah, it could go back.
I don't know. They've been promoting it probably since Reagan, right? And when you look at polls in the country...
So 30 years.
30 years or so, yeah. When you look at polls in America of, who trusts professional politicians versus who wants the anti-establishment bent, it's very high on the Republican side and very low on the Democratic side.
We're seeing a change in that right now, my friend. Bernie's within striking distance.
Well, not even right now. I would argue that Obama was elected on that very thing of coming and saying, you know what, Washington's broken, we need something new. We need a new we need new hope and change. And blah blah blah.
He's kind of half
now. Of course, as you say, it's a lying thing, and it's not true. And he's not. And since he got elected, he has not represented that at all. But at the same time, I don't understand why you criticize that, but you don't recognize it in the candidate that you support, Hillary Clinton. Whenever I say something about how the difference between reality and what she says, you're like, oh, well, I wouldn't say it like that. I would say, it's like, yeah, I understand, because you're a supporter of her. So you would voice it in a way that's positive.
I think, she has, listen, there are realistic expectations about Hillary. Everyone knows she's a politician. When people talk about Sanders, they overlook the fact that he's a lifelong career politician. This is what he does for a living.
No, right? I completely agree with you.
He does things to get elected to offices. Right? That's what he does for a living.
But so does she.
People overlook that fact.
Yeah, no, I know. But hold on. Hold on. Bernie's been elected to the same office for many years.
30 years.
I was going to say 30, but I wasn't sure. 30 plus years. At this point, and I would argue for the last probably 2 decades, he hasn't changed anything. He hasn't had to think about it. He just
the election. That's the thing, Barnaby. The consistency in the voting record. It shows that he's been representing one platform, and it's been resonating in Vermont for 35 years, and now it's resonating in this country. There's an upswell. He's at 40%.
Let's talk about that point. Let's talk about that point again, 4 or 5 weeks after he's been in the national spotlight for a while. I'm sure that image will tarnish. That the polish on that will fade.
Well,
where
you're probably
the
right.
Image of him being consistent, right? That will be attacked. What's the saying? 5 days from Sunday, or whatever. It's every possible which combination of trying to challenge his messaging about him being consistent will be brought out.
That's true. That's true.
If he's polished enough, he can withstand it. I personally predict he probably won't, but we'll see. We'll talk about it again in 5 weeks.
Good.
Whether you still think, and whether most Americans think he's consistent on issues after he gets attacked on it.
Yeah. All right. I think objectively he has been more consistent, but I do agree with you that will be attacked, and my own devotion to this guy will be challenged, and I will have to reevaluate things when it gets real. I do. You're right about that. You're right about that warning. So that's it. That was my argument, and you stood up to it well, my friend. We have a few minutes left, so I just wanted to bring this up.
We do? Can I?
Yeah, please.
Can I mention one last thing in the last few minutes then? Since we were talking about electability, if you view this as a sport, right, and I want to sort of cheer for my team, a lot has been said about the primaries, about who's going to win which state. I just want to kind of ask you guys what you think, is going to happen in the primaries, sort of on a state-by-state basis. So Iowa, for example, who do you think is going to win Iowa?
I think Bernie's going to win it by a hair. If not, he'll be in a close second. Mark?
Yep.
I'm going to answer it for Iowa, but I'm also going to answer it for every single state you're going to ask me. I think that Hillary Clinton, as the main candidate for the Democratic Party, whether the popular election Sanders wins or not, it's every state is going to go to Hillary predominantly, because even if the popular vote is one thing, the superdelegates of the party are going to vote for the person that party wants, which is obviously Hillary Clinton.
But the superdelegates don't get to vote in the state primaries.
Well, but what happens with the primary is the popular vote happens, and it's supposed to influence and give all the votes of the delegates of that state.
But I think they're legally bound.
The electoral. Well, they're not legally bound.
The non-super delegates, I think, are bound to vote for who their state, the popular vote goes to.
Depends on the state.
It varies state by state.
Oh, fuck that. Eddie?
I'm of the opinion, I think Sanders stands a good chance of winning Iowa.
Definitely New Hampshire, my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, New England's
He's been ahead in New Hampshire the whole time.
Yeah, but you got to look at you look at those New England states, and you look at the fact that Vermont was the first state to legalize same-sex marriage, and was the only state to do so without a court order right away. In 2009, I want to say.
Right. Yeah.
These are states that are very different than the rest of the country in terms of how they operate and what they do and how they think.
They're very white, and they're more liberal.
I think Iowa will go Bernie just to almost as a fuck you to Hillary, almost as to be contrarian. And then I think a lot of other states.
Barnaby, I think Iowa and New Hampshire go to Bernie. He gets a huge boost in the national media and the polls. Will he win South Carolina and Nevada? It's looking like definitely no. But I think the one thing that can change those big numbers is the Trump phenomenon. It's free media. So that's my opinion. He might be able to grasp South Carolina, and Nevada. He has a fairly okay chance. South Carolina, he has a Ice Cube's chance in hell right now. But I think those two wins, the power of winning Iowa and New Hampshire. So that's what Obama did. That's when the tide turned, when he won Iowa. So, in what was it? Santorum got third in Iowa last time, and then he became, for a week, he became the leading guy. He had 1%. He always has 1%. And
Santorum's a terrible person.
And then he got third, and then he was all of a sudden considered a serious candidate. So the power of those early primary states.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I do.
Did you want to say something, or?
I do. I want to point out how amazingly in sync we are on this. I also think Bernie's going to win Iowa and New Hampshire, and then get absolutely devastated in South Carolina.
Yeah, probably. But he'll do better than he'll do better than he is now, though, in South Carolina, right? Because of those two wins.
Well, yeah, but not by much.
Okay.
Like I said, I don't think he can hold that coalition that Obama had. I don't think he can hold the blue wall. And in order to do that, he would have to show a strong showing among the black vote in South Carolina.
Right.
If he does that, I may change my opinion about him, about his electability. But I think South Carolina will kind of show us he can't hold the blue wall.
Yeah.
So the same thing will happen, in Nevada. It's a mostly Latino voting state. Again, Hillary owns that vote for all intents and purposes. I think
she's renting it.
Sanders might. Yeah, I think Sanders is also going to win Colorado and Vermont, maybe Minnesota. A couple of those mostly white states. And I think it kind of has to happen that way, right? You can't have a coronation for Hillary. Bernie has to win a couple states. So
I hate it how you look at it like that. Give him a few states. It'll make it look more legitimate. You're diminishing him.
You're welcome to hate me all you want.
No, I don't hate you, brother.
This is my theory, right?
Brother, I don't hate you. I don't hate you.
Operates this, right?
I know. I was just saying. I just hate that statement. I don't hate you at all. Far from it. But we're already over time here for the second thing. But I maybe an editing miracle can occur where